Aaron Rodgers spent the first half on Sunday trying to will the Pittsburgh Steelers into the kind of offensive rhythm that's been elusive of late. The four-time MVP spent the second half in the locker room, his 41-year-old left wrist aching and his status uncertain for the final stretch of his 21st and perhaps final season. Rodgers watched from afar as backup Mason Rudolph and the Steelers pulled away for a 34-12 win over the Cincinnati Bengals. He did not return to the sideline at any point after injuring the wrist on his non-throwing hand during a stop-and-start first half in which he was sacked once and hit illegally twice, both of which drew flags for roughing the passer. Pittsburgh coach Mike Tomlin said Rodgers will be evaluated on Monday. It's uncertain exactly when Rodgers was hurt. He completed 9 of 15 passes for 116 yards, including an 11-yard flip to running back Kenneth Gainwell on Pittsburgh's first possession. The Steelers didn't do much more until their final drive of the half, a disjointed 86-yard march abetted by the two roughing the passer calls. Rodgers was hit low by Cincinnati's Myles Murphy, who drew the first penalty. Bengals defensive end Joseph Ossai appeared to make contact with Rodgers' helmet a few snaps later, though Rodgers also absorbed a handful of hits as Pittsburgh struggled to protect him from a Bengals pass rush that was missing injured star Trey Hendrickson. Cameras caught Rodgers holding the wrist after he threw incomplete to Gainwell on 2nd and goal from the Cincinnati 7. Rodgers stayed in for one more play, missing on a short pass to Roman Wilson. Yet when the Steelers walked back onto the Acrisure Stadium turf for the second half, Rodgers was nowhere to be found. Enter Rudolph, who wasn't aware that Rodgers was ailing until Rodgers pointed at him during halftime and said, "You're going in." It's not the first time Rudolph has found himself in this position. A third-round pick by the Steelers in 2018, Rudolph etched himself into franchise lore 2 years ago when he snapped one of the NFL's worst offenses out of a season-long funk and engineered a late 3-game winning streak that helped Pittsburgh slip into the playoffs. Rudolph found himself the odd man out a few months later, when the Steelers signed Russell Wilson and acquired Justin Fields. He spent a rocky 2024 with the rebuilding Tennessee Titans before returning to Pittsburgh this spring as an off-season caretaker of sorts before Rodgers finally agreed to a one-year deal on the eve of training camp. Rodgers and Rudolph have spent plenty of time together since Rodgers arrived, which wasn't always the case for Rudolph and whoever the starter happened to be during his previous stint with the team. While it's unclear for now if Rodgers will be available when Pittsburgh, 6-4, heads to Chicago next weekend, the Steelers have no issues if Rudolph's promising cameo against the Bengals, he finished 12 of 16 for 127 yards with a touchdown, turns into a more extended look. It's not anything different, defensive end Cam Hayward said. Some might be surprised. We feel like we have a bunch of quarterbacks all ready for those moments. Would we like Aaron out there? Yes, but we feel very confident when Mason steps onto that field. After some initial jitters, Rudolph settled in. He guided Pittsburgh on a 15-play, 61-yard drive that ended with a field goal by Chris Boswell. The next time the Steelers had possession, he helped put the game away by taking Pittsburgh 65 yards, the last 5 on a lob to Gainwell that put the Steelers up by 15 with 3:40 remaining. He's always delivered when called upon in the past, Tomlin said. That's why we value him. His performance was consistent with what he's done in the past for us. Not that we take it for granted. We appreciate it. The question is how long the Steelers might have to appreciate Rudolph this time around. Save for collarbone injuries while with Green Bay in 2013 and 2017, and a torn Achilles tendon suffered a handful of plays into his first season with the New York Jets in 2023, Rodgers has been durable. He has started at least 15 games 14 times since becoming a starter in 2008. Rodgers has hinted that this season could be his last. He's been solid, if not spectacular, for Pittsburgh, and was in the midst of a bounce-back performance against the Bengals after 4 shaky quarters last week in a loss to the Los Angeles Chargers. Initially after Week 11, Cincinnati Bengals All-Pro wide receiver Ja'Marr Chase told reporters he didn't spit on Pittsburgh Steelers defensive back Jalen Ramsey. Despite video to the contrary, Chase is doubling down with that story. The NFL announced a 1-game suspension for Chase for his Week 11 spitting incident. The Bengals wide receiver is appealing the suspension. NFL Network's Ian Rappaport presented the wideout's core appeal argument Monday night. His argument essentially being, as far as I understand, if he was going to spit on Jalen Ramsey, he wouldn't spit on his face rather than on the floor or on his jersey, said Rappaport on NFL Game Day. Predictably, Chase is receiving significant criticism for that appeal argument. Good luck making a convincing case out of that, wrote Steelers Depot's Alex Kozora. With such clear video evidence of Chase spitting on Ramsey, there's little argument he can make. Chase clearly spat on Ramsey's jersey, and not even down closer to the ground, where he could try to make the argument that it was inadvertent. He then lied about doing so and is apparently sticking to the story even as his head coach acknowledged his receiver's mistake, though still defended him broadly. Former NFL wide receiver Jordy Nelson will be the appeals officer in Chase's case. Regardless of the appeals officer, though, Chase successfully appealing his one-game suspension is unlikely. The video Kozora referenced, which Fox 19 Sports photographer Austin Brisky posted on X, shows Chase spitting on Ramsey during the fourth quarter of Sunday's matchup. In response, Ramsey punched Chase. The officials ejected Ramsey for the punch. Chase received a 15-yard penalty for his role in the altercation, but no penalty for spitting on Ramsey. Bengals WR Ja'Marr Chase getting put on blast. As one could expect, Chase doesn't have many in his corner with his suspension and appeal strategy. The Sporting News' Mike Moraitis also sarcastically wished the receiver good luck in his appeal process. Moraitis referred to the appeal strategy for Chase as a wild argument. "This is just a bad look all around for Chase," wrote Moraitis. "It's bad enough he spit on someone and then lied about it, but now he's going to go lie yet again in his appeal when it's crystal clear he is guilty. Chase should just take it on the chin, accept his punishment, and keep it moving." Bengals' Zach Taylor supports Chase. Despite Chase's unpopularity outside of Cincinnati at the moment, Bengals head coach offered his support for the receiver while speaking to reporters Monday. Taylor doesn't really have much of a choice. He would likely lose the team's locker room if he completely threw the wideout, who is one of Cincinnati's stars, under the bus. It's important to note, though, that Taylor didn't defend Chase's action of spitting on Ramsey. "I've always been impressed with how Ja'Marr handled himself because he is in a lot of these situations where he's got a target as a top player," Taylor told the media. "He gets a lot of respect that way, and so guys try to do a lot of things to get his attention and get him off his game. I've always thought it was unbelievable how he has handled himself in some really high-pressure, emotional decisions. Obviously, what happens is crossing the line. We can't have that, and I know he'll own up to that. But beyond that, I've always sat up here and praised Ja'Marr because he's one of the best leaders we've got." Taylor and the rest of the NFL, though, is still waiting on Chase to own up to spitting on Ramsey. The receiver declined speaking to the media Monday. The Pittsburgh Steelers defeated the Cincinnati Bengals 34-12 on Sunday, getting their record to 6-4 as they continue their journey to a hopeful AFC North title. The win didn't come without a few scares, though, as quarterback Aaron Rodgers left the game at the end of the first half with a wrist injury and did not return. Mason Rudolph played well in relief of Rodgers, though, completing 12 of 16 passes and a touchdown. Rodgers underwent tests on Monday to find out the severity of his wrist injury, which Adam Schefter reported as a slight break. Tom Pelissero of NFL Network is now reporting that the tests revealed Rodgers will not need surgery to repair any damage. Steelers QB Aaron Rodgers underwent further tests Monday that confirmed he won't need surgery on his fractured left wrist, Pelissero reports on X. Rodgers is pushing to play Sunday at Chicago, but doctors must clear him, and his status moving forward is TBD. Considering Rodgers' history against the Bears, this is a game he certainly wouldn't want to miss in particular, and the Steelers would obviously love to have him available to take on a Chicago team that has won 7 of its last 8 games.